She boarded that flight quietly. Just another woman in a beige blazer, unnoticed, unimportant. Or so they thought. What? Happened 30,000 feet in the air would expose something far deeper than turbulence. A single moment that shattered the polished mask of society, revealing how prejudice still hides behind polite smiles and first-class seats. This isn't just a story about one woman. It's a mirror held up to all of us. And by the time this plane lands, not everyone will walk away the same. The terminal hummed like a living machine, announcements echoing off marble floors, the rhythmic drag of luggage wheels, voices blending into a constant drone of hurry and routine. Yet amid that chaos, one woman moved differently. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't flaunting status. She walked with quiet authority, every step measured, deliberate, unbothered. Her soft beige slacks flowed seamlessly with a sleeveless blazer that looked tailored for precision rather than vanity. A faint glint from her gold bracelet caught the sterile airport light, flickering like a restrained flame. Her hair was immaculately arranged, her makeup minimal, every detail intentional, but never loud. It was the kind of presence that didn't ask for attention. It simply commanded it. But as she neared the first-class gate, attention found her. Not the respectful kind. The curious kind. The skeptical kind. A man in a creased navy suit glanced up from his leather briefcase. His eyes landed on her ticket, then on her face. A flicker of confusion. Then dismissal. A younger woman nearby, draped in designer fabric and an air of entitlement, adjusted her silk scarf and smirked, as if confirming some unspoken prejudice she'd carried her whole life. The gate agent barely met her eyes. No smile, no warmth. Just a monotone, straight down to the left, delivered with robotic indifference. A tone softened for others, sharpened for her. The woman thanked her politely anyway, her voice calm, graceful, betraying nothing. She entered the first-class cabin, that floating temple of quiet privilege. Champagne sparkled on silver trays. Polished shoes gleamed beneath wide leather seats. Conversations murmured in low tones about mergers, market trends, and homes overlooking distant coastlines. She placed her small carry-on neatly overhead and settled by the window. Her back straight, hands folded, eyes soft but observant. Across the aisle, a businessman adjusted his tie, stole a quick glance at her, then buried himself back in his laptop. The unspoken hierarchy of the cabin silently reasserting itself. Then came the subtler things, the kind that wound deeper than words. The flight attendant lingered with others, laughter light and effortless. She'd pour a drink, lean close, share a joke. But when the woman asked softly for a glass of water, the response came without eye contact. Just a moment. A moment that stretched into 10 minutes. Then 15, still no water. She sat quietly, her phone screen illuminating her composed face. Her eyes flicked upward briefly, catching sight of the attendant laughing at another passenger's remark. The sound carried a faint sting, the kind she'd grown used to in places she'd earned a right to be, but was made to feel she didn't belong. Her sigh was subtle, more of an exhale than frustration. She would not let them see irritation. That's how they'd win. That's how they'd justify it. Across the cabin, a man in a navy blue suit leaned toward the woman beside him, whispering something muffled under the hum of the engines. A soft chuckle escaped her lips, her gaze flicking briefly toward the window seat, toward her. The exchange was short, but the meaning was sharp, cutting through the pretense of civility. The whispers weren't lost on her. They rarely were. She had learned long ago to hear what people didn't say. Moments later, the same flight attendant reappeared, this time radiant, animated, the sudden burst of hospitality reserved for someone else. She stopped one row ahead, her tone dripping with exaggerated sweetness. "Are you sure I can't bring you anything else, Mr. Kensington?" The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile. Not out of amusement, but recognition. The performance was so polished, so predictable. She turned her gaze back toward the window, hiding her thoughts behind years of practiced neutrality. None of them knew, not yet, that the woman they had so casually dismissed was not just another passenger. She was the new CEO of the airline. And this flight, this ordinary moment of quiet prejudice in the skies, was about to expose far more than anyone on board was prepared to confront. She had lived through moments like this before. Too many to count. The sting was familiar, not sharp, but dull and exhausting, the kind that seeps quietly into your patience. The kind that tells you, in whispers, that no matter how high you climb, someone will always try to drag your worth back down to their comfort level. As the flight went on, the small slights began to multiply. A tray of snacks passed from row to row, smiling service for everyone, until it reached hers, then glided right past without pause. No eye contact. No apology, just omission disguised as accident. She pressed the service button, the small illuminated circle glowing faintly above her. It stayed lit for nearly twice as long as it should have before anyone responded. When the attendant finally arrived, her expression was polite but perfunctory, the kind of politeness born not of respect, but of obligation. Each act was small enough to deny. But together, they built a quiet wall between her and everyone else in that cabin, a structure of disregard mortared by unspoken bias. Still, she didn't push back. Not yet. She sat there, poised and silent, an island of calm surrounded by the rippling waters of subtle prejudice. Then the woman across the aisle, the one with the silk scarf and the smirk from boarding, leaned slightly closer, her tone wrapped in artificial warmth. "So, are you traveling for work?" The words were light, casual on the surface, but beneath them a faint edge of curiosity and condescension, the kind that didn't ask to know you, only to categorize you. "Yes," the woman replied, her voice steady, offering nothing more. The other woman's smile tightened. "It must be nice to treat yourself once in a while," she said, her laugh thin and brittle. "First class is such a luxury, isn't it?" The woman turned slowly, meeting her gaze for the first time. Her eyes were calm, deliberate, unwavering. "It is," she said simply, each word soft but edged with quiet authority. Enough to make the air between them shift. For a moment, the other woman blinked, unsure whether she had been challenged or dismissed. Before she could recover, the flight attendant swept by again, carrying a tray of steaming towels. Every passenger received one. Every seat but hers. Now, even those who had tried not to notice began to glance subtly in her direction. The quiet judgments. The faint murmurs. The micro-expressions people wear when they think kindness is optional. She didn't feel anger. Not the fiery kind. What she felt was heavier, more enduring, the weight of history pressing on her chest. The memories of rooms, meetings, and faces that had once looked at her just like this. But what they didn't realize, what none of them could, was that this weight wasn't crushing her. It was fueling her. The balance they thought was fixed was already shifting. As the cabin settled into its rhythm, conversations softened, dinner trays were cleared, and a movie flickered dimly on a nearby screen. The woman remained still, eyes lowered, posture unchanged. A portrait of serenity that concealed a storm of thought beneath. Every silent slight on this flight echoed others. Boardrooms where she'd been questioned twice as hard. Conferences where her achievements were credited to someone else. Voices that had tried to speak over hers. Each memory had carved another layer of quiet strength into her. Then the voice of the captain broke through the stillness, the intercom crackling overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." Every head lifted. Conversations paused. "I hope you're enjoying your flight," the voice continued, calm, confident, unaware of the tension already thick in the air. "I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge someone very special traveling with us today." The words sliced through the monotony like a blade. Passengers exchanged puzzled looks. Even the attendants froze mid-step. "On board with us," the captain said, "is the new CEO of our airline, a remarkable leader who has already inspired our entire team. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Evelyn Monroe." For a heartbeat, The entire cabin fell silent. The name hung in the air, heavy and electric. Then came the murmurs, rising, overlapping, a current of disbelief and realization. Heads turned, eyes scanned, and finally, recognition spread like wildfire. The man with the laptop straightened abruptly, his earlier confidence collapsing into discomfort. The couple who had basked in the attendant's attention traded uneasy glances, their smiles faltering. Even the woman across the aisle, her scarf perfectly in place, her superiority freshly ironed, froze mid-breath, her lips parting but no sound emerging. The flight attendant stood motionless, her composure cracking for the first time. The tray trembled slightly in her hand as her gaze darted to Evelyn, then away, then back again, as if she couldn't trust her own eyes. Evelyn turned her head, meeting those gazes one by one. Not with anger, not with pride, but with something far more disarming, quiet authority. A calm that demanded respect without ever asking for it. The cabin, once filled with judgment, now sat in a silence thick with shame. And as the captain's voice continued through the speakers, "Ms. Monroe," the captain's voice echoed through the cabin speakers, now softer, almost reverent. "On behalf of the crew and all passengers, thank you for flying with us today. It's truly an honor to have you on board." A wave of polite applause broke out, hesitant at first, uncertain, then growing louder as understanding began to ripple through the cabin. People clapped not out of celebration but guilt, out of realization, out of the need to make themselves feel less small. Evelyn responded with a graceful smile, the kind that didn't gloat, didn't flaunt, but carried weight all the same. A simple nod of acknowledgement, subtle yet powerful, like a queen accepting the apology of a kingdom that had wronged her without ever saying it aloud. But the energy in the air had changed. The same people who had dismissed her minutes ago now watched her with wide eyes and uneasy admiration. The hierarchy had shifted, and they all felt it. The flight attendant appeared again, walking briskly down the aisle, a bottle of water clutched in both hands like an offering. Her expression had transformed, no longer indifferent, but painfully polite. "Ms. Monroe, I'm so sorry for the delay earlier. Is there anything else I can get for you?" she asked, voice hushed, deferential. Evelyn looked up, meeting her eyes. Her face revealed nothing, no satisfaction, no anger, only calm. "No, thank you," she said quietly. "I'm fine." Her words were simple, but her tone carried an invisible mirror, reflecting everything the attendant had done and forcing her to see it. For a moment, the attendant just stood there, awkward, trapped between professionalism and shame, before retreating to the galley without another word. The murmurs began again, this time slower, heavier, wrapped in embarrassment. Whispered sentences passed between passengers like contraband. "She's the CEO? You're kidding. Oh my God, Evelyn could feel it all. The weight of their reckoning, the shifting discomfort that always came too late. She had seen it before, in corporate meetings, in conferences, in rooms where she was the only one who looked like her. It was always the same. They underestimated her first. Then overcompensated when they learned who she was. But this time, the discomfort wasn't hers to carry. It belonged entirely to them. The applause had faded, but the silence that replaced it was louder. Every rustle of paper, every nervous sip of champagne sounded amplified in the thick air. Evelyn remained perfectly composed, scrolling through her phone as though nothing had happened. But she could feel their eyes. The man with the leather briefcase, the one who had stared at her boarding pass with suspicion earlier, now avoided her completely. He flipped through his in-flight magazine, turning the pages without reading a single word, desperate to look occupied, desperate not to meet her gaze. Across the aisle, the woman with the silk scarf, the one who had asked if she was treating herself, sat frozen, her face drained of color. She shifted in her seat, stealing fleeting glances toward Evelyn. Her earlier confidence evaporated. And then came the same flight attendant again, clutching a tray of refreshments like an apology made visible. Her smile trembled. "Ms. Monroe," she began, her tone overly bright. "Would you like a complimentary dessert? Perhaps something warm to drink?" Evelyn turned to her, her expression calm but unreadable. A faint, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Not mockery, not cruelty, just recognition. "No, thank you," she said evenly. "I've had everything I needed." The words lingered. Not a refusal. A verdict. The attendant's smile flickered, faltered, then vanished entirely. She nodded quickly and disappeared once again into the galley. Evelyn turned her gaze back to her phone, scrolling through emails she had already read. To the rest of the cabin, she seemed absorbed in work. But inside, her emotions tangled in silence. There was satisfaction, yes, the quiet vindication of having proved them wrong without uttering a single defensive word. But underneath it was something more somber, a familiar ache, the sadness of knowing that even now, in her position of power, respect was not given freely. It was earned through revelation, through shock, through moments like this. How many times had she been here before? Different rooms, different faces, same story. The weight of other people's assumptions carried quietly across her shoulders, invisible, but relentless. Across the aisle, the younger woman finally broke the silence. Her voice was soft now, stripped of arrogance. I had no idea," she said, leaning slightly forward. "Congratulations on the new role. That's really impressive." Evelyn turned her head, her expression kind but measured. "Thank you," she replied simply. Her tone was warm, but distant, like a closed door spoken through politely. The younger woman hesitated, her lips parting again, as if searching for the right words. Maybe to apologize, maybe to explain away her earlier behavior. But Evelyn didn't fill the silence. She let it hang there, heavy, necessary, because some lessons don't need to be taught with words. They're learned in the quiet weight of one's own discomfort. It wasn't long before the man with the leather briefcase tried to reclaim some dignity. His voice came out too loud, the kind of volume people use when they want to be overheard. "You must have worked incredibly hard to get where you are," he said, forcing a chuckle that didn't reach his eyes. "Running an airline. That's no small feat." Evelyn lifted her gaze from her phone. Her smile was faint, not dismissive, just deliberate. "Hard work always pays off," she replied softly. Then, after a heartbeat, her tone shifted, still calm, but sharper beneath the surface. "But sometimes, it takes more than that. It takes people willing to see beyond what's on the surface." The words were simple, yet they carried a quiet gravity that settled into the cabin like a shadow. The man nodded, lips pressed thin, pretending to take her point as wisdom rather than rebuke. But everyone knew it was both. He turned back to his magazine, eyes scanning pages he didn't read, his earlier confidence now a memory. After that, the air changed again. The whispers that had once swirled like wind died down. What replaced them was heavier, a hush of reflection, a collective discomfort shared by strangers who had suddenly seen themselves too clearly. Evelyn didn't need their apologies. She didn't want them. Her silence was statement enough, her presence, proof of everything they had refused to see until someone had told them who she was. For her, this wasn't about validation. It was about revelation, letting the lessons seep into them quietly, like turbulence you don't notice until the plane steadies again. As the flight began its slow drift toward descent, the earlier chatter had vanished completely. The cabin now moved with a subdued rhythm, soft movements, lowered voices, stolen glances that carried shame wrapped in admiration. Evelyn noticed. She always did. But she gave no outward sign of satisfaction. She was used to this pattern. Judgment first, revelation later, and then the awkward, fragile aftermath. Yet something about this time felt different, as if the silence around her wasn't just discomfort. It was awakening. Across the aisle, the woman with the silk scarf, the one who had smirked earlier, shifted in her seat, fidgeting with her ring. Her polished composure had cracked. Finally, she turned, voice barely above a whisper. "Ms. Monroe, I just wanted to say," she began, pausing to steady herself, "I think it's incredible what you've achieved. Truly. And I hope I didn't offend you earlier." Evelyn studied her face for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, calm and even. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "And no, I wasn't offended, but moments like this remind me how easily we make assumptions about people before we ever know their story." The woman nodded, her eyes glassy with embarrassment. "You're absolutely right," she murmured. "I guess I didn't realize how much I do that. It's something I need to work on." Evelyn offered a small, understanding smile. "Awareness is the first step," she said simply. The line hung in the air, soft but weighty, like a door quietly closing on a lesson learned too late. Across the aisle, the man with the briefcase stirred again, his earlier arrogance fully replaced by uneasy curiosity. He cleared his throat, leaning slightly toward her. "Ms. Monroe," he said cautiously, "if I may, I'd like to ask what motivated you to take on such a demanding role. Running an airline. It can't be easy." Evelyn turned to face him, her posture open, unthreatened. When she spoke, her voice carried a steady authority, the kind earned through endurance, not position. "It's not just about running an airline," she said. "It's about creating space, opportunities, making sure that people who look like me, or come from where I did, have a chance to be seen and heard, to belong in rooms that once pretended they didn't exist." Her words landed softly, but their echo filled the cabin. The man nodded slowly, the meaning dawning in his eyes. He leaned back into his seat, saying nothing more. His face thoughtful, like someone hearing truth for the first time and realizing it had been around them all along. The intercom crackled to life again, breaking the stillness. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our descent into Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport," the captain announced. Evelyn felt the subtle shift beneath her feet, the downward glide of the plane returning to Earth. She fastened her seatbelt, her gaze drifting to the window. Below, the city glimmered like a constellation laid flat, its golden light stretching toward the horizon. As the flight attendants began their final cabin checks, one of them approached, the same woman who had ignored her water request earlier, the same one who had rushed to make amends once she learned who Evelyn was. Now her expression was different. No performance, no mask. "Just human, Ms. Monroe," she said quietly, her voice trembling at the edges. I wanted to apologize for earlier." The young attendant's voice trembled slightly as she spoke, her eyes glistening with the weight of sudden awareness. "I didn't realize who you were," she said softly. "And I should have treated you better. I'm truly sorry." Evelyn looked at her, not with anger, not with triumph, but with the quiet steadiness of someone who had long learned the value of composure in the face of bias. She studied the woman's face for a heartbeat longer than comfort allowed, then spoke gently. "Thank you for apologizing," she said, her tone calm yet firm. "But it's not about who I am. It's about treating everyone with the same respect, no matter their title, no matter their seat." The attendant's cheeks flushed crimson. She nodded, eyes glancing toward the floor. "You're absolutely right," she murmured before stepping away, the guilt heavy on her shoulders. The cabin was wrapped in silence now, an odd, reflective quiet that seemed to hum beneath the soft drone of the engines. Outside, the world below glimmered with lights as the plane began its final descent. Evelyn leaned back, her gaze fixed on the faint horizon beyond the window. The moment carried an unexpected stillness, a mirror held up to society itself. That flight, she realized, had become something far more than a trip from one city to another. It was a compressed version of a larger truth, a truth that had followed her throughout her life. People judged what they saw, not what they knew. They assumed, categorized, and dismissed. And yet, within those judgments, there was always an opportunity, an awakening waiting to happen. When the wheels met the runway with a soft thud, Evelyn felt something shift, not just in the aircraft, but in the atmosphere that surrounded her. The landing wasn't just mechanical. It was human. The real descent had already taken place in the hearts of those passengers who had silently confronted their own prejudice. As the plane taxied to the gate, Evelyn remained still, watching the quiet choreography of changed behavior around her. The passengers who had once cast subtle glances of doubt now moved with subdued humility. Their laughter was softer, their voices lower, their eyes carrying the weight of recognition. The man with the leather briefcase, once so quick to judge, now kept his gaze down, closing his magazine as if ashamed by the shallowness of its glossy pages. The woman across the aisle, who had once mocked Evelyn's presence in first class, now offered a faint apologetic smile. And though no words were exchanged, Evelyn understood. This was how transformation often looked, not loud or dramatic, but fragile and sincere. When her row finally emptied, Evelyn rose gracefully. Her posture was the same as when she had boarded. Shoulders back, chin lifted, the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. Her beige blazer remained immaculate, untouched by the turbulence of others' opinions. She walked down the narrow aisle slowly, aware of every pair of eyes that followed her movement. Each step she took felt like a closing statement, a wordless declaration that respect should never be conditional. She didn't need applause this time. The silence that accompanied her exit was louder, more profound, than any round of clapping could ever be. As she stepped into the terminal, a soft breeze met her face, a rush of sterile airport air mixed with something faintly liberating. For the first time in hours, she breathed deeply. The journey had ended, but the story, the lesson, was just beginning for those left behind on that plane. Change, she thought, rarely came from shouting or confrontation. It came in quiet reckonings, in uncomfortable silences, in the soft collapse of certainty. Sometimes it arrived in the form of a woman simply choosing to exist without apology, forcing others to question why her presence unsettled them in the first place. From behind, the flight attendant stood at the door of the aircraft, watching Evelyn disappear into the terminal's glow. Her mind replayed that one line again and again. Treat everyone with the same respect, regardless of their title or position. It was a truth so simple it almost hurt. And in that lingering silence after Evelyn was gone, something sacred remained, a collective awareness that dignity should never be selective, and that humanity begins with empathy. Because in a world built on appearances, the truest form of power is grace. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more untold truths.